Welcome, constables, Russian spies, and Ian Levine. This is episode 522 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 7th of September 2024, and featuring K-9, the Cambridge spy, written by Jason Bork and starring Robert Maloney as Alistair Griffin, Keegan Joyce as Starkey, Philippa Coulthard as Georgie Turner, Daniel Weber as Darius Pike, and should have written down his temporary name, and John Leeson as the voice of K-9. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and I have stabilized since the semester has started. With me are Alex Fireheart,
Hello.
who is acting technical director, and color commentary Aaron Romeo Moon Burke.
Hello.
So it's been a few weeks, and we've got quite a bit of news. But how are we doing? How is everybody doing?
Not too bad. I mean, thankfully I've been getting some extra hours at work because, uh, um, it probably wouldn't have been as much of an issue, but, in February, the second largest, wrestling organization in the US is doing a show here. So I tried to get a ticket when I could. And because I ended up having to go a lot further back than I was originally intending, I still had quite a bit of money left. So I'm like, oh, I'll just sort out a hotel now so I don't have to worry about that in like several months' time. And then
And I'm guessing it's not WCW anymore.
no,
Or is
it's AEW, All Elite Wrestling.
Ah,
I mean, they have some people who were involved with WCW, but not too many. But yeah, and then yeah, so like after the hotel, I'm like, and like because I actually got charged at the time, when these days I'm used to like, oh, they'll just, you know, charge me when I get there or something. I look at how much money I've got left, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
I went from having a good amount to not much, and I'm going
yeah,
to
yes.
I'm going to Brisbane in October. So yeesh, that like I'll put it this way, that suddenly went from, oh, I'll just fly down and back, and like my dad, who was going down like roughly at the same time anyway to get tax stuff sorted, would just like go and drive down, drive back or something. Now I'm like, okay, I'm either driving down with him or because he's like worked for the government owned rail before and that he's a train driver now, maybe he'll be able to get us like cheap train tickets down. Or something like that. But it's a thing of like, I'm very glad that I like, basically when I had as much money aside as I did, I was able to splurge in like little bits here and there, but not like spend too much. But now it's like, oh, okay, yeah, now I've got to like be really stingy with money for the next month. Like thankfully it's not until like late October, so I've got a decent amount of time. So basically, so long as I don't splurge on that, like I can't even remember the last time I bought a game, but I'm definitely not buying any games until at least after October. Unless I somehow get a shit ton of money in that amount of time, but probably won't. So, we'll see how we go from there. But otherwise, I've been fine.
Yep. So talking about money, yeah, last time we met, I had been going through a difficult summer. And first, my school gave me too much of a student loan refund. Like they gave me more student loans than they were supposed to. So I got a $17,000 deposit, and I knew that some of it had to go back, but I didn't know how much. But I had like $3,000 in past due bills. I spent $1,000 on a huge grocery run. That was like a mixture of like food and also like I have I have my fridge and freezer are still full with food from that Costco trip.
Mm-hmm.
But it also like that's also I bought like 6 months worth of paper plates, 6 months worth of garbage bags, you
Mm-hmm.
know, a huge thing of hand soap. If you've ever been on a Costco run, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, I go there. I was just there
um,
today.
but I replaced my broken TV. I replaced my broken monitor. I replaced my broken chair. Um, and actually, because the monitor was so cheap on Newegg, I think because of back to school deals or whatever, I also bought a portable monitor to leave in my office on campus, which is nice, so I can be productive when I'm on campus. Um, and then they told me how they sent me the bill. Oh yeah, and I bought a bunch of new clothes, which I like to at least every school year. I like to buy new stuff I can teach in, so that's always nice. And then they sent me the bill for what the correction was, and it brought me right back to my normal. Oh, okay, I have just enough to make it through the rest of the month
Mm.
situation. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
plus the fact that I'm like, I'm saving money. I'm putting aside a certain amount for whatever happens. And I'm trying to limit my delivery um, to only nights that I do podcasts. So if my last delivery was on my birthday, which was not all that long ago, um, but I'm trying to keep it that way. I'm trying to like there were times, especially when I get stressed out, I might get delivery 5, 6 times, 7 times a week. More than that if I'm really stressed out and I just got paid. But I'm trying to keep it that way so that I can save money and not be stressed out next summer because I don't know my funding situation in the summer.
Mm.
So yeah, that's what I'm trying to stick myself to. Aaron, how's your few weeks been? You've been very busy, which I think is the main reason we have not
Yeah.
podcasted.
Well, 2 weeks ago, my boyfriend Chris and I went to a resort up in Wisconsin Dells, Aloha Resorts, which is part of the Nature package of places. It was great. We had a lot of fun. We ate at non-affiliated Denny's, I guess is what it's called. But
Yeah, well,
that
you
was
mentioned that.
actually
What does
really
that
good
mean? Like, is
food.
that like
They're not part
they?
of they're not part of the actual chain somehow. I
Mhm.
don't know
So
how
like they had a
or
Denny's
why.
set up and they lost their franchise or something.
I think so, maybe because like all of their bakery is home. It's like more of a Perkins because all their bakery
Okay.
is homemade. You got a kid like sitting there slicing up like Rice Krispie
Okay.
bars and stuff like that. But like their cinnamon rolls were amazing because the frosting for one thing comes on the
Hmm.
side and they heat it up. The
Part
French
of why I ask is it's like if you think they're supposed to be affiliated with Denny's and they're not, they may have had some sort of problem that caused them to get kicked off.
they've got the official like looking logo and everything too, the Denny's logo and all that. They've got like kind of quirky stuff on the inside, like a lot very 80s retro style. Their
Mm.
jelly was weird. Apparently they put their grape jelly through a grinder, but there's also kind of like this little bit of back flavor of like red wine vinegar to it. But they put it in a squeeze bottle and you just squeeze it out onto your toast. And it was like
Mm.
the best grape jelly I've ever had. I'm like, holy crap, what's in this? Um, so we went there. We went to the Shinala Supper Club, which was also amazing. 2.5 to 3 hour wait for dinner, but there's 4 bars. You can order appetizers whenever you want, along with drinks. They're known for their old fashions, their Wisconsin old fashions. They sell about 1,200 of those a night. About 104,000 this season, but their golden season was 120,000. And it's also set back in the woods on Mirror Lake. in the Dells area. So you drive through the forest to get to the supper club. They just put in a new bar for outdoor entertainment. Their escargot was amazing. Chris had a 24-ounce steak. I had a filet mignon with butterfly prawns. It was all very expensive. It cost us, along with the $700, which is the remaining charge of the hotel room, it cost us about $1,500 for the entire weekend. Because we also went on the Dell's duck trip and stuff like that. And then this past Labor Day weekend, I went up to see my mom, who is now officially in hospice. So she's doing at-home hospice. The nurses are visiting. She's comfortable. She's on steroids, so she's got a lot of energy. She's not sleeping that much. But she's cognizant and she's doing well. She's able to go out to eat with us and everything. So she's just kind of moving more slowly. And on Monday, by the time I was about ready to leave, she was mostly sleeping. So she's it's, obviously I've had much more tragic deaths recently in my life, and this one feels a little bit more natural. It's still very sad, I still cry about it and stuff every once in a while, but you know, at least she's lived like a good life. So,
That's good.
mhm. So other than that, that's and also played my first game of Pathfinder tonight, so which I really enjoyed.
Yes,
And then-
Pathfinder. Okay. On tonight's show, we have birthdays, and I managed to pare it down to 10 official birthdays. We've got some news. We have one piece of geek talk from each of us. Then we have our episode summary, review, final thoughts, and ratings. So we'll pass it off to Aaron with our births and deaths.
Okay. All right. So first off, for birthdays, August 20th, we have a few. We have Sophie Aldred, who played Ace from 1987 to 1989, along with 2022 plus Big Finish and online specials, has turned 62. Next up, we have Sylvester McCoy, who played the Doctor from 1986 to 1989. I believe this the seventh Doctor. Plus Big Finish and online specials, turned 81. Um, and also we have Anthony Ainley, who played the second version of the Master from 1989 to 1981
The
to
third or
1989.
fourth version, depending on how you count it.
Oh yeah, that's right, because we had the
We had the
was
Crispy
it
Masters.
yeah, we had the Crispy Masters. So, from 1981 to 1989 would have been 92, but died in 2004 at the age of 71. All right, August 22nd, we have James Corden, who played Craig Owens in series 5 and 6, turned 46. We also have Mark Williams, Brian, who played Brian Williams in Series 7, turned 65. On August 25th, we have Keegan Joyce, played Starkey in the K-9 Australian TV series, turned 35. Holy shit, he's old. August 26th, we had Phil Collinson, producer and executive producer for Doctor Who and Sarah Jane Adventures, 2005, 2008, and 2023 to the present, turned 54. August 30th, we have Bill, our very own Bill Sylvia, the man in black, turned 36. There we go. Happy birthday, Bill. And August
Thank you.
31st, we had Royal Castle, who played Ian in the Aru Doctor Who movies. Would have been 92, but died in 1994 at the age of 62. September 1st, we had Bern Gorman, who played Dr. Owen Harper in Torchwood Series 1 and Series 2 plus the Big Finish stuff turned 50. And then we had Kai Owens, who played Reese Williams in Torchwood Series 1 through 4 plus Big Finish, turned 49. We also have a lost story here. Very sad to announce Richard Morris, the designer of the 1974 episode Invasion of the Dinosaurs, has died. His age was kept private.
I just realized, I apologize, I didn't put the link there. Luckily, I
Oh.
put all the information that Aaron needed to know, and I just made Alex have to go find a picture.
Morris trained at Hammersmith School of Art and Building and joined the BBC as an assistant designer in 1964 before going on to work on credits including Dr. Finlay's Casebook, Middlemarch, the Onedin line, Secret Army, The Survivors, Wings, and more. Morris was nominated for a BAFTA for the designs for When the Boat Comes In. In 2003, Richard Morris and his friend Doug Pynchon opened up Richard Douglas Productions and produced shows to be performed in London's West End. On to you, Bill.
All right, yes, moving on to our Doctor Who news, starting with spin-off news. As of August 23rd, the BBC released a cast photograph marking the start of production of the 5-part spin-off, The War Between the Land and the Sea. Cultbox has since reported spottings of many of the known cast members filming since then, but we don't really need to, have a whole bunch of articles about that. Our second piece of news, also about The War Between the Land and the Sea. This news from the first script read-through, where several previously unannounced cast members came to light. This, as you can also see in that photograph, includes Ruth Madeley as Unit Scientific Advisor Shirley Ann Bingham from The Star Beast, and Colin McFarlane as General Austin Pierce from Children of Earth. Moving on to cast and crew news, although this could arguably be called future episode news, but I'm counting it as an interview. Despite our hopes of annual Doctor Who in the RTD2 era, it is beginning to look unlikely. In August, Jane Tranter was reported telling Deadline that Season 2 is expected to come out in another year or so, being early in the edits currently, which television schedules would tend to suggest means that it's going to be an autumn rather than spring release. In addition, and more recently, or actually this was more recently reported, although apparently it's Comic-Con news, Russell T. Davies says the BBC and Disney have not yet commissioned Season 3. RTD told SFX Magazine, "It's an industry decision. It's like any business. These things take time. I think the decision will come after the transmission of Season 2. That's what we're expecting. That's what we've always been heading toward. If both of these timelines come to pass, we may see The War Between the Land and the Sea get a year to itself while Season 3 is filmed, and then Season 3 releasing would then be in, 2027. So not what we're hoping for, but at least that would be something every year.
Yeah. And if you're gonna have something to hold people over, a miniseries isn't a bad idea. So you would want to stretch that out then and just actually do that one episode a week instead of potentially dropping it all at once.
Yeah. Has there been any talk of that happening all at once?
I guess I'm just thinking
I don't think...
I think some things not many, but a couple of things.
I don't think Disney Plus often does that.
Yeah, the only things with Disney Plus I can think of that have done that are the Tales of the Jedi and Tales of the Empire. I think
Gotcha, and those were kind of
once.
yeah. Okay.
So
but yeah, I think the Disney Plus originals tend to be weekly, so this would be the same. Our next bit of news as we move on to Doctor Who alumni. And Amy Pond actor Karen Gillan recently made an appearance at the Toronto International Film Festival, wherein she announced that she was pregnant. Karen is currently married to comedy actor Nick Kocher. I don't know if I pronounced that right or not. It might be Coker, Kocher. I don't know. It depends on the name origin. Also, at the same time I learned this, and since I'm pretty sure we've never reported this, so I should have known it. I found out that Clara Oswald actor Jenna Coleman had announced her own pregnancy in July.
Oh,
So
cool.
I guess the new generation of companion actors is upon us.
Almost wonder if it's just that, like, maybe that slipped down noticed because she wasn't, like, making, like, a gigantic deal of it. And maybe, like, I forget if she's still doing that show.
I mean, I'll be honest. I think
So.
it largely slipped our notice because we only checked 2 sites for news, unless I see something on Facebook.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not sure what either of them are doing at the moment, other than, yeah, I mean, they kind of are doing a soft reboot if they do another Guardians of the Galaxy. So we may not even see Karen in the MCU anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe only in big special events. All right, then we move back to Aaron for new release news.
Okay, we've got I believe we've got some Penguin books are coming out. We'll be looking at they're coming out now and coming up soon. Doctor Who in Wonderland by Paul Magers, a novel involving Lewis Carroll and Alice's Wonderland.
I think because it's Welsh, it's pronounced Paul Mars.
Mars? Okay.
Yeah.
Don't
ask.
I don't know much about Welsh. What was the other one? The other language in and around England and the UK that really messed me up. I don't know what it was. Not
Celtic, or I think Irish might be the modern version of that.
there was classic King Arthur stuff was done with it. Maybe it is Welsh. I'm not sure.
Might just be
Anglo-Saxon?
No.
Middle English?
I think it might be Welsh. I'm not sure. There's the Black Cauldron also uses it a lot for names. So.
But yeah, if I people who are in that area, feel free to correct me in the comments. I'm pretty sure that Scots, Irish, and Welsh are all part of the Celtic family of Celtic or Gaelic. I don't remember which is the family, Celtic or Gaelic or both. But they're all like in some way related. They're all like the original people that lived there before the Romans and the Germans showed up. And then the French and the Scandinavians later showed up, and now the whole thing's a mess. But yeah, all of those languages, I think, are part of the indigenous family of languages.
Yeah, I was thinking of Welsh. I was thinking of the Mabinogi. Or 4 branches or the Mabinogion, I should say, is the early Welsh prose stories. Blah, blah, blah. If I could stumble over my words even more. All right. And then also coming up, we have Death in the Stars, a Melanie Bush story by Bonnie Langford, in which Mel and Sabalom Glitz discover a spaceship doubling as a murder mystery. See, I would be interested in reading that. That sounds pretty cool. Hoodle by Tom Dedopoulos is Roland Hall and Dave Knowles is a puzzle book describing itself as a whodunit adventure through time and space. Well, that's kind of interesting. As well, and the fourth announcement, The Adventures Before, is a collection of 8 short stories by various authors. So, I would definitely be interested in reading Death in the Stars. That's for sure. At least. So, As well as moving on, we have September 3rd, a big finish announcement. Was it Fourth Doctor? It threw me off. 4DA. Fourth Doctor Adventure Series 13, Dominant Species, is due out. Written by Sarah Grochala? Or Grohala. And John Dorney, starring Tom Baker and Eleanor Crooks, featuring Christopher Naylor as Harry Sullivan. So, cool. And that's it for our announcements.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was gonna say, if Bill wasn't back, we would have probably skipped to yours, but I guess we'll give you a bit of a break. So, Bill can talk about Adventure Time.
Okay,
Woohoo.
yes. So I spent this time kind of binging Adventure Time. It didn't really start off as a goal of binging it all by the next podcast, but it kind of worked out that way. I was just watching some people react to it on YouTube, and I was like, you know what? This kind of seems somewhat interesting. But the things they do to keep their channels from being taken down means that I don't see the whole episodes. And I'm like, you know what?
Mhm.
I've been saying that them reacting draws attention to the show rather than drawing viewers away from it. So I might as well put my money where my mouth is and actually watch the show. There's 10 seasons overall. The first season or two, it's very clear. It's like this is kind of a mostly kid-oriented show. I say mostly kid because, like with most kid shows, there's some adult-oriented jokes. I guess it was aired, around the Gen Z era, not 2010. But it starts off, it's clearly like, what is the most random, wacky shit we can put on screen at one time? To the point of, as some reaction channels have mentioned, they intentionally make you think about like a moral or lesson of the story and then do the exact opposite, and that's how they resolve the episode. And then as the show goes on, one, it starts to kind of turn the wacky shit into world building. And I'm not saying nothing was planned out, but I don't know what was. And there's some things that very clearly like were thought up after the fact. It has a very interesting mythology of its own. It never stops being wacky, although it is kind of less random in the end. There is an internal logic to it. I actually thought the big bad was going to end up playing more of a role than he did in the end, but I guess there's 2 spin-offs and he appears in at least one of them, which I may watch now. I may put some time in it before. But I'll say in the overall, I liked it. I won't say I loved every episode equally, but the story was interesting. I had seen like a lore breakdown beforehand, so it was really interesting. Like, okay, this thing is only kind of very subtly implied, and you really need to read between the lines to actually understand the lore. While some other things that were like set really early in the lore breakdown are things that you don't see until season 10. So that was interesting. I will say, well, I guess sometimes it does feel almost like they don't want to like. I guess it's because it was such an long ongoing show that some things they don't want to seem to definitively put a pin in. That so many of them are left open. But I'll say it was mostly satisfying. Yeah, the last episode kind of ties things together very well. So I don't think I'd put it in one of my top shows of all time. It's not an Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's not. I'm trying to think of other things that might be for a comparable age. It's not. It's not necessarily a Teen Titans, although I have to rewatch Teen Titans as well. But it's not bad. It's decent. It's something that was probably made for a much younger audience. But that as a 36-year-old, I enjoyed. Honestly, the worst part of it is that they end with the dun 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 dun, dun and nobody yells cartoon at the end. Because I guess they stopped doing that by 2010.
Yeah.
I'm really at the end of every episode. I'm really disturbed by them by nobody yelling cartoon, cartoon.
To be fair, that was only
Um,
ever at the start.
oh,
It would be like before the thing in the block.
I mean, to be fair, the start and end of every episode are the same thing when I'm binging it on Disney Plus.
Mm.
Yeah.
With that, we'll move to Paramount Plus with Evil.
All right. So if you enjoy horror movies and horror shows and other creepy crawly things, I highly suggest you check out the series called Evil on Paramount Plus that aired from 2019 to 2024 with 4 episodes. Although the last four, or with 4 seasons, the last 4 episodes of the fourth season, though, are kind of a truncated fifth season. So it's technically 4.5. It's a nice mix of the Conjuring, Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, X Files, Nightmare on Elm Street. It centers around
Okay, you just
a
described some radically different tones and
oh yeah,
themes there.
that is the tone shift. There are some very creepy sections in it, as well as some very funny sections in it. For example, a demon is wearing a human suit skin, goes to peel it off and tries to chase after our heroes, only to trip over the ankles of his human suit skin. He has forgotten to fully remove it,
Does he
and so
spend the
he's
time asking for sugar?
no, not quite. Although I think they do kind of reference that too. Um, it basically revolves around 3 assessors that are hired by the Vatican to look into cases of miracles and exorcism and other creepy doings and stuff. So, one of these, the main character, psychiatrist or psychologist, Karen Bouchard. She is kind of chosen to join by soon to be Father David Acosta, a dude who's training to become a priest, and his handyman Ben. I can't remember his last name. But he's also kind of a tech whiz. So you got Ben the atheist, Karen the oh shit, what do you call it? My brain just died. Believes in a god, but not the god. And then you've got David, who is following the Catholic order. So, and then you've also got other characters like a nun that can see demons and stuff. The demons do appear in the show, but they're usually seen as hallucinations or in dreams, and the monster designs are incredibly unique and interesting. So of course you've got Leland who Townsend, who is like the demonic psychiatrist that is also kind of inserting himself into their lives. They are trying to stop these 60 demon families from creating the apocalypse and inviting the Antichrist into the world. So, as well as, kind of confronting the Catholic Church on its own faults. So check that out. It's very interesting.
All right, that moves us from shows on streaming to movies. And once again, I think we hit a radically different tone, if I understand this one right. Lisa Frankenstein.
Yeah, like effectively this movie is, well, I guess if it helps figure what kind of a tone it is, this was written by the same woman who did Jennifer's Body. Now I haven't seen Jennifer's Body, like at all. I think I've like seen bits and pieces, maybe due to like maybe watching a review of it or something, but otherwise, all I'm mainly
Yeah,
aware.
for a second, I was like, wait, did Zelda Williams do Jennifer's Body? I was like, no, she just directed this. She didn't write it.
I was gonna say, yeah, this is apparently Zelda Williams's feature length directorial debut. Like almost said directorial, but then remember that I was like, oh no, she'd done like shorts and other stuff prior. Just this was their first feature film. Yeah, I only really saw this at all, because some friends in another Discord server decided to do like, I don't know how regularly we're going to do it, but it's kind of a thing of just meeting up every so often to just watch a movie together. And this was the one that we started with. It was kind of a random pick. But someone was like, well, I have this movie. So we just went with that. The funny thing is I don't recall ever hearing about this movie when it came out. And this came out this year. It came out in February, which in hindsight, they probably should have waited until October because this did flop, unfortunately. Which it's like, you know, there's kind of a horror rom-com thing going, so I can kind of get putting it out in February, but I probably would have stuck this in an October release. I guess for the record,
they might have expected it to be crushed in the theaters in February by like the people who would have wanted to watch it watching other things. And I'm not. I don't think I said October, but I meant to say October.
Yeah.
Whatever it was that I said.
I mean, I could also necessarily see people being like, oh god, another Frankenstein movie. And like maybe that putting people off somehow, even though it's like, I mean, I'll put it this way. I went in expecting she was actually going to be accumulating body parts to make a man with. But no, it's that someone that has been dead for like fuck knows how long gets somehow brought back to life.
I will say, we have a nod to Lisa Frank, we have Frankenstein, we have The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, and we have the daughter of Robin Williams. To me, that sounds, there's no other nothing else that could be than a cult classic to me. That does not sound like a mainstream thing.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, I doubt, like, I wouldn't have expected this to do like gangbusters at the cinemas, but it is a bit sad that, like, because this had like a 13 million budget. I feel like in some cases they probably could have tried to cut that down. I don't know if they still would have made as much as they needed, but in any case,
I like the 80s aesthetic that they went with.
Like, because this is set in 89, which I didn't even like, they flat out stated at some point, but before that there's like an offhand reference to the song Kokomo. And so I looked up when that came out, and that song was released in 88. So I'm like, okay, so this is late 80s, and then they flat out state later like that it's 89. Which is interesting because I feel like that's of the like set in the 80s movies now, usually it's like early or mid. So it was kind of interesting that this was set in the late 80s. But yeah, it was interesting realizing that I have seen Catherine Newton in stuff before, because she was in 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I forget what her role was in that, but it was like, oh, okay. Plus she was in Detective Pikachu, which was also kind of funny because it's like those are 3 very distinctly different movies.
Allegedly, the writer claims that the Lisa Frank part of this was completely unintentional. Yeah. I don't know if I believe that.
I could see it being like a happy accident of like, well, we're going with Universal, so we can use Frankenstein. And she just kind of had a name set on Lisa. I mean, like, you know, the character's name is Lisa Swallows, which that's a choice, but you know, which at first I thought the first time she was called that it was like as an insult, and it's like, oh no, right. That's literally her name, is like, you know, when they call her over the PA system at the high school she goes to, they call her that. So it's like, oh shit, okay, that is actually her name. But yeah, like this wasn't the movie I was expecting it to be, but I still enjoyed it. I kind of wish I had seen it in the cinemas. To support it some way, but kind of oh well. I do kind of hope they do. I mean, in my mind, a thing to do now would be to re-release both Jennifer's Body and this as like a double feature. Given they're set in the same fictional universe, so which the writer has also said.
Are they both on Prime?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, in any case, I really enjoyed
Jennifer's
this.
Body is only available to rent on Prime. It's not free.
But yeah, like I really enjoy this. It's like I feel like there are some bits that didn't hit as well as they wanted to for me, but that might have just been the expectations I had going in versus what I got, kind of a thing. Whereas this feels like a movie that will grow on me with time. Which is better than some movies where I either like them a lot and then like them less, or, you know, just was kind of on the fence and then get worse as I watch them more, kind of a thing.
Google says Jennifer's Body is on Hulu. I might do a double feature of these on Halloween.
But yeah, in any case, I definitely say it's worth checking out if people can get a hold of it.
All right, and that brings us to the summary.
Alrighty. Let's do this thing. Let's see here. Bring up my notes.
Did I close? Okay.
But yeah, so just let me know when you're ready.
All right.
So
I am ready.
Yep. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
As an electrical storm reels overhead, it causes a power surge through Professor Griffin's space-time manipulator that sends Georgie, who is wearing VR goggles in order to do research into the cause of crime in 1963, into a different time. The rift in time is stabilized thanks to the quantum equalizer, but Griffin is unsure for how long. After Darius finds a newspaper from 1963 with a photo of Georgie in the background, Starkey and K-9 volunteer to save her while Darius and Griffin operate the equipment. Georgie is placed in a holding cell along with Bill, a man who suspiciously resembles Darius. Starkey and K-9 arrive to a startled constable who has just discovered a satchel of papers in an illegally parked taxi, a wild chase in which Starkey loses both of his communicators, one of which falls into the hands of hapless Miles Barrington Blythe. Meanwhile, Darius discovers his ancestor, Bill, has been arrested as a Russian spy, endangering Darius's existence. The constable greets Agent Barker at the station to interrogate Bill and poor Miles is thrown into a cell with Georgie. Darius disappears from history, leaving Griffin and June to operate the STM as they make contact with Starkey and K-9 and tell them to save Bill as well as Georgie, or Darius will cease to be forever. With Georgie and Miles rescued, K-9 distracts the constable who chases after Miles. June helps boost the power of the STM via lightning strike. K-9 and the others confront Agent Barker, while Bill refuses to run without clearing his name. Miles returns and K-9 reads aloud the mysterious paperwork found in the taxi. It contains a code, but before the spy's name can be announced, before the spy, a government official can be revealed, the papers explode. Bill is cleared and K-9 and company are returned home. Afterwards, in the depths of night, Barker exchanges a copy of papers with Miles, who turns out to be a Russian spy. The end.
Not K-9 and Company.
Yeah.
I was a bit late on the stoppage there, so it was likely that you got it in 2 minutes 11 seconds.
Yay! It was a little bit garbled, but I was trying not to plagiarize TARDIS Wiki too badly.
I like
So
how you made it sound like the real injustice was being forced to share a cell with Georgie. At least she wasn't singing in this episode. A few notes before we go on to the review. The past part of this story is set, of course, on the day Doctor Who first aired, which is also the day that Remembrance of the Daleks is set. However, the one Doctor Who reference in the newspaper that mentions Bill Pike being convicted for treason, they mention His Honor Chief Justice Lord Ian Levine. Ian Levine being I want to say the director of Planet of Giants. Actually, I can just click the link and be sure. Who's known as allegedly was the program's unofficial continuity advisor in the 80s, although TARDIS Wiki, I think, does make a point of saying that that's not proven. So I don't know. That may have been a self-given title. I'm not entirely sure. Speaking of which, he did compose the theme music for K-9 and Company.
I think the Planet of the Giants thing was like that he was responsible for organizing like a thing they did for the DVD where they recreated the episode that got cut, because it was originally supposed to be a 4-parter and then became a 3-parter. So I think he
that would
was involved
explain
with
why I
that.
thought I saw it somewhere, but I can't find, like, Planet of Giants is not mentioned on his TARDIS wiki page.
Because I definitely feel like I've seen footage from like walkthroughs they were doing for the thing for that, and he seemed to be around. So
all right, so now we move on to our review, and our pecking order starts with Aaron. What did you like about this episode?
There's actually quite a few things that I like. And yes, I am eating a granola bar.
Like, I'm entirely prepared to be tongue-in-cheek this entire review, although I may also try to come up with serious responses.
Well, and like I actually liked this episode, so I think it could have been way worse, but let me see here. I'm gonna have to say that my favorite character was Miles Barrington Smythe. He was just
Okay.
entirely too likable. I'm like, you're too much of a nice person. And actually, I wouldn't. I keep saying this about a lot of things, but I wouldn't have mind seeing him in a spin-off with him as like the Russian spy villain. And just watching like characters trying to pursue them and that, like To Catch a Spy or something like that. So
A spin-off of a spin-off. I'm not sure.
Make it happen, Big Finish. Make it happen.
Oh, Big Finish maybe could afford to make this happen. Who? I'm guessing that Jason Bork owns the character. Who even produced? Park Entertainment, Stewart and Wall Entertainment. Neither of these are the names of channels, so I don't know. Do either of those names ring a bell to you, Alex?
not really.
No. Well, not to go on a big tangent. So, okay, so you like the character of the Russian spy pretending to be English. Okay. Alex, what did you like about this episode?
In hindsight, I'm realizing that was one of mine, but thankfully I did have a few. Never thought I'd necessarily go with this, especially because of how often we joke about how often they go back to like the sewers and stuff. But I kind of like the practicality of, yeah, this manor that the professor lives in used to be a police station. Or at least was taken over by the cops at some point to be one.
Okay.
Because it's like
It's
we're
kind of
on a-
reminiscent of Pyramids of Mars.
it's like with that, we have that low of a budget as is. Like, rather than have to make up an entirely new set for this to happen in, let's just, say that this manor was something else at some point. Because, like, especially because if I think we figured out that this was set in, like, the 2050s or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, between the 60s
Yeah.
and then it having been, like, gone from being a police station to a private residence, I could buy that. Like,
Yeah, it's an interesting expansion on lore. You don't see it
Mm,
often
mhm.
in shows.
yeah.
I'm now wondering how much that actually helped in terms of set, because it's like, obviously, like, all the bookshelves and stuff aren't there, so they still had to either shoot this in the last or first, or they had to build new sets or something.
Like, I could basically see them being like, well, if we just make the manor also the police station, then we can
Mhm.
like just
Save the
redress.
exterior,
Yeah,
maybe.
we can
Yeah.
we can redress the set rather than having to like build an entirely new one. Because I think
Alright.
we also only see
Sorry,
like
go ahead.
very specific places as well, which also might have been a
Mhm.
calculated thing of, okay, if we redress this and this a bit, then we're fine. And like the
Which,
prison cell thing is, the jail cell thing is easy enough. So
right. It is funny. Once I saw the exterior shots, I made a comment in our group chat. I was like, "Oh, this is why they had no budget the last few episodes. We have exterior shots. We have like, street shots of London with maybe one car in it."
Mm.
I like that they tried to kill off Darius. No, seriously, I like they did something original. Like, this is the first time we've had time travel in this show. They're doing something unique with it's not actually the character from the modern day. I think it's like his father or whatever. But the one who plays the like I think he's a detective in this. Um cast cast
Are you talking about the guy who plays Agent Thorne? Or he looks suspiciously like Agent Thorne
yes, so
from the
he's
2050s?
he's the actor from Agent Thorne. He's called Agent Barker here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's right. He's from MI6 in
Mm-hmm.
this. The guy in
Mhm.
the ancestor is
Well,
from MI6.
he's actually working with the Russians, but he's
Yeah.
both, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And TARDIS
Um
Wiki points out how he is kind of parallel with his ancestor Thorne in that.
yeah, but I think part of that is stuff we don't know yet. I think maybe
Okay.
because I think we don't actually know who Thorne's boss is yet, but the wiki does.
Ah, okay. Dun dun
Um
dun.
But yeah, so it was interesting, right? Because the only thing we knew, the only thing we know in recent episodes is that Thorne came back, and then we see this guy played by the same actor who's a double agent. Um, so yeah, it seems like it's hinting at something, but especially like for us, it's been years since we last saw the character, so I was just like, I don't even remember him. So it was a good way to kind of reintroduce a version of that character. But either way, just like the whole time travel angle and the fact that it uses recurring characters, it just felt like a breath of fresh air for K-9. All right, what do we dislike about this episode? Uh,
Hmm.
it was Aaron that went first?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it was me. Hmm.
I have it written down in front of me, but for some reason I was doubting it was true, and then I remembered the quote.
I don't believe what I've written. Yeah, you truly are.
I blame the fact that I've been teaching the past few weeks, so I've been asleep well before this podcast started.
Yep. Yeah, well, I go to sleep at about, well, lately it's been 10:30, but like I try to
Mm.
go to sleep by about 9:30, 10 o'clock because I get up at 4:30 every morning.
Mm.
Um, but I'm actually gonna. I don't know if anyone has thought about this, but why wasn't Georgie held for drugs? It's the
So
60s.
that was my
She's
first thought.
walking
I was
around
like,
spaced out. Why didn't he
I
be
was
like,
like, you see somebody who
Mm.
doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know when she is. She's talking weird. She doesn't seem to know who she is, and it's the '60s. I would have gone to drugs way before I went to Russian Spy.
uh-huh.
Um, and I was sitting, and I was like, I almost thought to make that like the constable a complaint, but I'm like, you know what, like this type of character is a trope, and it's not a bad trope for a show like K-9. He's still better than the cops from 2050.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was just like, yeah, and she's very obviously just wandering around in a daze when she first zaps and it's just I thought it would be, but maybe it's Australian censorship, so you can't really mention that on a kids show. Like I remember in the 90s when it was everywhere, don't do drugs, kids. So, yeah,
Mm.
it was just kind of an interesting omission.
Yeah, I was sitting there like, she's like, oh, I don't know when it is. I don't know where it is. This guy says he knows her name, but she doesn't recognize it. It's the '60s.
Mm.
Maybe, check her pupils or something.
Speaking of pupils, did you guys see how big Barker's pupils were? His pupils were huge.
Uh,
The actor who plays Barker, he just had
mhm.
gigantic pupils. I'm like, curious and curious.
Mm. Yeah, I think the
You
only
just got back.
reason
Mm,
they didn't go into anything other than maybe vague allusion to drugs is just the fact that this is aimed at like little kids.
mm-hmm. That's kind of what I thought. I was like,
Yeah.
that's probably why they didn't mention anything.
Like that'd be why why Darius's like great granddad is more like, oh, she's a bit loony,
Hmm.
rather than, oh yeah, she's just on drugs, don't worry about it, kind of a
I
thing.
think if it weren't I think if it were an American like little kids show, there would have been like, oh, it's the '60s. Nobody remembers where they are, and that's all. Like,
Yeah.
that's as explicit as it would have been.
Mm-hmm. Again, like I think if it were done in the 90s, it would have been like a PSI, a PSA type episode. So, oh no,
Oh,
she's
Nancy
on the
Reagan.
caffeine pills again. We gotta stop her.
Oh God, I understand that reference. All right. So that was Aaron. Alex, what did you dislike about this episode?
um. Hmm. You know what? I will say the actor playing Darius as Darius felt like it was kind of phoning it in a bit. Like, there's like a few moments here and there, um, of like him as like the great grandfather that are a bit, that probably could have used another take, but you've got such a low budget, you probably couldn't afford
I
too
mean,
many.
they were the
Um,
same guy.
yeah, but it's like, but like him as Darius, some of the acting was just like, wow, that's that's
he come.
that was just like, yep, I'm just reading the lines because I'm way more interested in the other role I have to play in this episode.
I thought he did pretty good as Darius's grandfather,
Oh
and
yeah, like I enjoyed that, but I think that it feels like he was much more like, oh thank God, I have like an accent that I have to do that's like fun, and I
Mhm.
have like a little character and whatever. Versus I'm just kind of there as Darius,
I'm-
so he's not. It doesn't either. He wasn't trying, or he wasn't getting good direction. One of the two.
Mhm.
On that note, we get a character that looks and sounds like Darius directly saying that Georgie is a kid. So I don't know how old Bill is meant to be, but I don't know how old Darius is meant to be either. So
Yeah. I mean, like, I think the idea is, well, he's supposed to be playing his own great grandfather, so we can excuse
yeah,
that character being older.
yeah. I mean, if Aaron, I don't think has been here for any episodes where that was a major thing, but
yeah.
at the beginning of the season, there was a big love triangle plot where Darius was trying to get with Georgie while Georgie had a crush on Starkey. And we
Oh
spent the
wow.
whole time like, yeah, Darius is like 1.5. Darius's actor is like 1.5 times Georgie's actor's age in this.
Yeah.
Oh geez.
Yeah,
It's
like
just weird.
Georgie
Yeah.
Georgie was the only like legit teenager, I think. Like the other guy, the Starkey might have been like
Well, we
17
know
or
now that he's
18.
35,
Let's do
and
some
this
math
was
here.
14 years ago.
Yeah, like
So
Bill,
yeah,
do the
so
math
he
for
should have
me.
been he should have been what, 21 if my math is right? Yeah. So Starkey's actor was 21.
hmm. But yeah, the thing being, I think it ended up being, for me, it ended up being weird either way because Georgie's actress was legitimately a teenager. Which is probably why that for as much romance as they've been doing, they haven't kissed at all and probably won't.
They may have dropped that subplot, or maybe it's just gonna pop up later and be
Yeah.
weird.
I could
Yeah.
see, I could potentially have seen either A, the actors having been uncomfortable because of the age gap, or Georgie's parents, like the actress's parents being like, can we not, because these guys are like, this is probably technically illegal with their age versus her being legitimately 16 when they were filming this. So it's like, I could see either of those being why they dropped it.
Yeah, because I didn't notice anything in Black Hunger, or was it The Last Oak, or this really.
And all of that said, and I keep bringing this up because ever since I've figured this out, it just seems weirder more every time I think of it. On Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where they had sex scenes between an actress who was 17 and Nicholas Brendan, who was at about 10 years older than her.
I mean, Joss Whedon.
Yeah.
Now that we know.
Yep. So what do I dislike about this episode? My main thing that comes to mind is Darius is still alive at the end. K-9 as a show would have been immeasurably improved by removing Darius from the rest of the season.
That would have been interesting. Like, can you imagine that? Like, having to have the characters deal with the grief of, well, Darius being gone.
Or
having to
or
pretend that they're sad that he's gone.
what if they all forgot about him except for the people who actually time traveled? The professor just forgot Darius ever existed.
Who
June
was
thinks that Georgie made him up. But if something
Oh
like
yeah,
that,
that's right.
I guess Doctor Who kind of did a version of that plot, but we don't want Darius to come back as an Auton at the end. Which that really didn't make sense either, but that's neither here nor there. Otherwise, yeah, my biggest complaint otherwise is that the constable was a bit heavy-handed and like assumed everything he looked at was a Russian. But again, I don't know if that's bad. Like it's unrealistic, but is it bad, right? Like he
Yeah.
for a kids show, like that's not an unrealistic way for like the bad guy of the episode to act.
Yeah.
Plus, we don't actually know if he's working with Agent Barker, right? Barker? Yes. We don't know if he's working with Agent Barker or he's just an innocent cop or not. And if he is working with Agent Barker, actually no, did you say the cops which oh no, it was Alex. What did you say you saw about the Russian evidence?
It's like I just saw that they actually showed the cop discovering it.
Oh, discovering it. So the cop
Yeah.
didn't plant it. Okay.
No, yeah, because he was looking through the testing. Because remember, Bill mentions about all the tickets he's going to accrue on the taxi by being stuck in jail. He's like, oh man, I'm going to have so many violations on my taxi. So it's assumed that he illegally parked his taxi, and that's what called it to the constable's attention. And the constable found a satchel sitting on the back seat. Well, that's where most of the taxi customers are going to sit. So maybe it's lost property that needs to be returned to the owner.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay. So yeah, so that's not confirmation in either direction about the constable. But yeah, that's really the worst thing I have to say about this is Darius survived. Which I guess like maybe the kids watching would have considered a happy ending. I'm not sure.
I mean, it would be interesting, but you're right. Like people would just forget about them. They wouldn't even be in mourning. Jeez, that would be dark. Don't mess with time travel, kids.
All right, favorite scenes, Aaron.
Oh geez, I've got like 3 of them listed. Um. I think. Damn it. God. The first one I really like too, but I'm gonna go ahead with my second choice. Where Bill says, "You're a kid. They'll call your parents and sort it out. No problem. Is it?" And so, like, Georgie just turns and looks away from him and is just like, it might actually be a problem, for, well, for example, she doesn't have any parents in that time. But then there's also kind of, what is June going to think about all of this? She's probably worried sick and everything, but I don't know. It was a layered kind of scene there. There's a lot of, stuff going on there with, Georgie obviously worried about getting back to her mother, as well as the fact that if the police do try to call her parents aren't around. So how does she explain that? That's just going to further cement her suspicion against her for being a Russian spy.
Yeah, that was one thing I was thinking. It would be like if she any explanation she gives, unless she lies and claims to be like her own grandmother, anything she says is going to make them like, oh, so you're really a Russian spy.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, favorite scene.
I think I might have had a different one, but I'm gonna go with the moment of the professor just being like, "Oh, this can't possibly get any worse," and then June shows up asking where Georgie is, and he just got like specifically it's just for that little break of like him just kind of laughing at it. It's just like he's just kind of broken in that moment of just like, well, I walked
like,
into
of
that
course.
one. Like I kind of set myself up for that. It's just like I remember like genuinely getting a laugh out of that the first time through. It's like it is such a cliche bit, but just they pull it off. They pull it off well enough that it was still funny.
No, I spaced at the wrong moment, and I've spent the entire time trying to wait for you to hint again at what scene you had just described, and you never gave another hint, so I have to out myself as having spaced out. This is what happens when you're not on Adderall, kids.
I was just at the game group tonight. People were just talking about one of the guys had his ADHD medication had run out, and so then that led into a discussion about how people were either undiagnosed with what was most likely ADHD or how their medications were also running out
Mm.
for ADHD. So and Adderall was one of those medications. How they can't be on that. I can't be on Adderall. It just makes my ADHD even worse.
So
So
what was the scene?
It was the scene where the professor is just like, "Oh, this can't possibly get any worse," and then
And then June calls.
yeah, like
Skypes, I should say.
like I think it's even specifically she's at the front door and is like, "Hey, sir, I need to come see." Yeah,
his ring camera.
yeah. It was just
I
like,
would explain why. Like, I mean, there's never like an incoming call sign. Her face just shows up on his computer, and I'm like, that's invasive, and that's what all these companies wanted to do when 2020 hit. Like, if I could just be sitting at home, like, with or without a shirt, doing whatever, and like my boss's face could just pop onto my screen and see my camera. Like, no, like that's awful.
Yeah, like I think it took me until like the second go through to realize, oh yeah, she's standing at the front door.
But that would explain why she's in the house the next time we see her.
Yeah. Because like I think at first I did assume that she was like at work or something, and then like he had to admit to her what happened, so she like came over. But like then the second time through, I'm like, oh wait, no, yeah, that is the front of the manor. So
okay. So I think my favorite scene is, I guess I'm going to go with K-9 reading out the Russian code. Like, it doesn't make a lick of sense in that, like, oh yeah, the way that we're going to make everyone believe us is by super obviously saying that we're going to break this guy out and then having our robot read out a Russian code. Obviously, that's all acceptable evidence in court. But, somehow it worked, and it's just like, the Doctor Who fan in me is like, yes, obviously having K-9 be like, oh, what a simple little silly code the Cold War Russians used here, and all of that. Like, it's just like there's something satisfying about it that it's hard to put my finger on.
I guess in hindsight, I'm also realizing a backup of mine would have been the guy who turns out to be a Russian agent, like patting K-9, and then he starts rattling off the like, this unit does not like being pet, and like,
and then you see George and Starkey like saying mouthing the whole speech.
Yeah, because it's like they've probably heard this a million times by now. So
I didn't catch them doing that until the third time I watched this, which normally I would not have watched a K-9 episode 3 times. But yeah, this podcast was delayed a few times, and I didn't want to be like, well, I watched it 10 days ago. All right, least favorite scenes.
Okay. So, oh god. Let me see here. There's a few. I'm gonna. There's so many. I'm gonna go say. After K-9 says at imminent detonation, and Starkey ducks under the table, he then asks why. And then I'm just like, well, maybe because something is about to explode.
Yeah. Like if that was like, if the imminent detonation thing was like in K-9's own head kind of a thing and only he could hear it, then that'd be one thing. but
Mm-hmm.
like he does say it out loud. So it is a bit
Mm-hmm.
weird that you'd be questioning, wait, why are we ducking under a table?
Fair enough. Alex.
um let's see. You know what? I think I'll go with and this is kind of an example of what I meant earlier. Um the scene where Darius initially disappears is played kind of like underwhelmingly. Like for a guy who's like disappearing from existence, he's not really putting much into it. Like you can play, I'm not saying he has to like be screaming or whatever. You can play that more low key where you're more panicked than manic. Like I get that, but it also feels like he's just not really putting much energy into it either way. It's just like,
For the
oh
sake of
no.
argument, do you think that might be because his conscious mind is also fading out of existence? So it's just like, oh, I'm ceasing to exist now.
I mean, maybe, but I feel like even Doctor Who itself has had better portrayals of that. I mean, the War Games from the 60s has
Mm-hmm.
like the warlord being erased from time and just screaming no at the fact that that's happening. I mean, to be fair, he's also a
Mm-hmm.
maniacal villain, but still, like,
Right.
um, you would think there would be
Darius
a
would be
bit.
like, I'm not even going to get paid for this.
Like the fact that there isn't more like panic on his face and stuff like that. Um, and again, like he's had good acting moments. He has better acting moments in this episode. So I can't entirely tell if that's on him or if that's on the director not
Mm-hmm.
directing him well enough. Or it also being a matter of like, well, that wasn't a great take, but we're also on a like, we have a budget of 2, so we can't really do another take. So that'll just have to do for now. Oh well. So yeah, it's just like the professor also feels kind of understated. Like you've known him longer than you've known the other two, and you're not really freaking out that much. Like you should have,
And
even if you like call him a brat and want to friggin' swat him with your newspaper or something, you still like you have a bigger connection to this guy than either Starkey or Georgie. So it feels a bit weird that his is still kind of understated. He's doing more than Darius is, but it still feels a bit underplayed for how serious the situation is.
I'm trying to even remember his reaction because I remember him being like, "You, you being here is proof that everything works out," and that's at his normal energy level, right? Full
Mm.
energy level there. And then Darius is like, what's happening?" And then the professor turns around, and I don't really remember the reaction after that. Which
Like,
is might be what you're saying, right? Like maybe I
yeah,
should
yeah.
remember it if you were really
Right.
like concerned about this.
Like from what I remember it was more, and I could be remembering it wrong, but it felt more like dull surprise rather than shock and horror.
Hmm.
Which like if the episode had gone with he's been erased from existence, so because he's still in the present day, the professor just completely forgets about him the second he disappears, that would be one thing.
That would have been interesting, but we know that's not what happened.
Right. But like, you know, the way the time travel works in this is a bit wonky in that way. That it's like, you know, he did get erased from time, but we can still totally remember that he existed. And then he kind of comes back and forth a bit later. But yeah, it feels underplayed for what it is what it comes down to. Like, And I feel like both, especially given what at least the actor who played Darius has gone on to do later, like, he's definitely capable of it. So, I don't know. And I feel like there's even been other episodes of K-9 we've done where he's done better acting. So, to me, it almost comes down to just directing, is what I have to assume. Is like a mix of like, maybe he just figured, oh, well, that was a bit of a dud take. Maybe we can do another one. Oh, wait, we can't? Oh. But yeah.
Would it be running the bit into the ground if I say that my least favorite scene is when they save Darius? No, but no, I'm actually going to go with when so-called Miles like distracts the cop and comes back. Because at this point, like, it's kind of weird. Like, and like knowing from a meta perspective, we know why. So my complaint is less about Corey Robinson's acting and more about like nobody picking it up. Because first of all, like this guy is like he's a stereotype of the English, right? He's like
Yeah.
he's like if I had just watched Mary Poppins and then I was like, okay, now I need to pretend to be English. This is the performance I would put on. And then he goes out of his way. Like, he doesn't know these kids. He doesn't know K-9. He's just in it for the lulz. And he goes and distracts a cop and then comes back. Like, the fact that he came back is suspicious. It's like, okay, you got away with it. You should be gone. Why are you coming back to jail? Back to the police station. Something shady about that, and nobody picks up on it.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
think between the main cast, they should have at least one brain cell to rub together.
yeah. I
And
mean,
they don't.
I forget even if he leaves the police station to lose the cop. He might have just
We don't
somehow
see where
lost
he
him in.
goes. We just kind of
Yeah.
see him run off screen to run from the constable, and then he claims that he gave him a good run, but he evaded him.
Yeah.
Which, being a spy, that might mean he shot him, tased him, squirted a flower in his eye. We don't know.
I mean, we do never see that cop again, so.
Right. So yeah, that constable might be dead now. We don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he's dead now. It's been 60 years, but you know what I mean.
I mean, we don't ever see him, do we? We never see him again after that.
Right. Yeah, I don't think we do. Alrighty then, final thoughts. Starting with Aaron.
Let's see here. I kind of like K-9's enthusiasm for the 60s slang. I thought it was actually pretty endearing. I do wish that instead of just the lantern, they had managed to sneak a police box in there somewhere. I know it's
Yes.
like right outside a police station, but like maybe slightly down the street or something, or near the taxi or something like that. So
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, this is the one time they can put a police box into K-9 and it's not copyright infringement in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't.
Yeah. So I was kind of disappointed to see that. They do at least, have a colored lantern that says police on there, but I didn't even realize that was kind of a reference until my second watch through, so it did not jump out at me at all. Let me see here. Yeah, otherwise I thought it was an interesting story, nice little time travel story. Even though it didn't have a very big budget, I think they did a lot with what they had. And I think that's kind of where shows like this and even classic Doctor Who really kind of shine is, they don't need a ton of special effects or anything. They can, as long as they have a decent story. And I thought the story for this was actually pretty good. Despite the fact that I have like I have 5 like least favorite scenes and only 3 favorite scenes. So, but yeah, I would suggest checking it out. It was interesting.
All right, Alex.
Yeah, I'd have to. I mean, I'd have to go back and rewatch uh the ones we previously covered, but I would say this is at. I can't definitively say that this is my favorite K-9 episode so far by virtue of the fact that, you know, it's been so long since we covered like the first stretch. But at the very least, I'd feel like this is one of my favorite. By virtue of the fact that it is relatively hard to think about negatives. Like, yeah, there are like some of the acting's a bit iffy. Some of the dialogue was making me cringe, like, and some of it's just the delivery, and some of it is just like, oh, there's like, it's not even a bad line, but it's like, you know, like the bit where Georgie is saying something to the effect, like in the first couple of minutes of like, "Don't diss my threads, man," or something like that. I'm just like, oh, but that's probably the desired effect.
Mhm.
Like
I
that.
thought at first that
Georgie
she
being
said,
cringe.
yeah.
No.
At first I thought she said, don't was it don't bash your don't bash my breasts, man, or something like that. I thought I had to rewind it and re-listen to it.
uh
Mm.
but yeah, like stuff like that, and honestly all of the like the K-9 60s references was a bit much for me, but it also kind of makes sense that if anyone's gonna just be spouting silly stuff like that, it's probably gonna be K-9. um
Mhm.
uh but yeah, otherwise, like, while some of the time travel stuff in this is a bit head scratching, um and I think I kind of like hand waved it by like, this is a spin off to Doctor Who, and Doctor Who repeatedly just, you know, waterboards science anyway. So like, you know, like it's like I can't really be too thingo with like this being technically a spin off of a show that has never necessarily had consistent time travel rules. Um so, you know, and is constantly like, you know, revisiting several places and has like 3 or 4 different destructions of Atlantis at this point. Um and stuff like that. So it's like I kind of give it a pass for that, but yeah, it's like while this could have been better, it's also still one of the better K-9 episodes we've had so far.
And yeah, I would say I don't think this episode is technically that good. The sets are very sparse. We've mentioned some issues with the writing, but it was fun. It was enjoyable. It felt, you know, it definitely, like, if I were watching this every week, like, this would definitely stand out as, you know, a unique and interesting episode. They took a couple recurring characters and made new characters out of them. Although arguably, maybe, you know, the characters could have been a little different instead of having the exact same personality, but you know, they wouldn't be the first show to do this. So yeah, I don't think this episode is by any means good enough to be a 5.0. But it's certainly, I would say, above average for a K-9 episode.
Mm.
And you know, I wish we get more interesting and experimental things like this. On to ratings.
Hmm. I'm I think I'm going to go ahead, and I actually enjoyed this episode enough to give it a 4.0.
4.0,
Mhm.
same as last week.
Mhm.
Alex.
I definitely can't give this a 5, but I'm willing to actually be nice and give this a 4.5.
Hmm.
4.5, better than last week. And I think I'm going to be the opposite of Alex. I'm going to give this a 4.0 to match Aaron, which is a little below my score from last week. Again, not bad by any means, but yeah, it's more entertaining than good, I think. So it makes it same as last week, an average of 4.17, which places this at 180 or tied for 166 out of 482 things reviewed. It is on par with K-9 Ouroboros, Sarah Jane Smith. Oh, that's Big Finish. No other spin-offs. It is better than Doctor Who and the Curse of Fatal Death, Torchwood Sleeper, Torchwood The New World, Torchwood End of Days. And it is not as good as Sarah Jane Adventure or Warriors of the Kudlak, Sarah Jane The Curse of Clyde Langer, Sarah Jane The Vault of Secrets, or Sarah Jane Prisoner of the Jadoon. An interesting trend, how it's better than a bunch of Torchwood episodes and not as good as a bunch of Sarah Jane Adventures episodes.
And I will say, this makes so far Ouroboros, Black Hunger, and this Cambridge Spy are the 3 highest ranked so far episodes of K-9. Everything else is lower. From what I could tell from the TV story chart thing.
I think you're correct. All right. So, yeah, please let us know in the comments what you thought of this week's episode if you've watched it. It is free on Tubi in the United States, so you know. Don't forget to like the video if you've listened this far. Subscribe on YouTube to get our exports, or follow us on Twitch to get notified when we stream. Next time, we look at our last K-9 of this current run with The Lost Library of Ukko, written by Deborah Parsons and starring Robert Maloney as Alistair Griffin, Keegan Joyce as Starkey, Philippa Coulthard as Georgie Turner, Daniel Weber as Darius Pike, and John Leeson as the voice of K-9. And that is all we have to say about the Cambridge Spy.